I always believed that trust, once earned, should be held sacred, especially when it's your own blood. My name is Eleanor, and I've lived in this little house on the hill in California for nearly 50 years. It's where I raised my son, where my husband and I planted our rose garden, where every corner holds a memory. I never imagined I'd be writing this, let alone sharing it with the world. But if you're watching, I need you to hear my story to the end, because one signature changed everything. Michael, my only son, used to bring me coffee every Sunday. He'd sit by the window, ask about my health, tell me I didn't need to stress about bills or taxes anymore. He said, "Mom, let me take care of things. You've done enough for everyone." And I believed him. He smiled when he handed me the papers, said it was just a formality, said it would simplify things and protect me just in case anything happened. I didn't even read the fine print. I didn't think I had to. I signed. And from that moment, everything began to unravel. If you've ever trusted someone with your whole heart, only to feel that heart shatter in slow motion, you'll understand what comes next. Because I wasn't just losing a house, I was losing something far deeper. So please, stay with me. This isn't just a story about paperwork. It's about betrayal. It's about promises made and broken. And it's about a woman who refused to disappear quietly. Because the fine print? It had teeth. And by the time I read it, my name was already gone. It started with the mail. Nothing dramatic, just missing. One day I realized I hadn't seen a utility bill in weeks. No water statement, no property tax notice, not even the usual Medicare pamphlets that used to pile up on my side table. I figured it was a mix-up at first. Maybe the postman's route had changed. Maybe someone new was sorting the neighborhood mail. But deep down, something in me stirred. Something quiet. Still, I brushed it off. After all, Michael had said he'd be managing things now. "You don't need to stress, Mom," he told me. "Let me handle the boring stuff." He smiled when he said it, that confident, casual grin I used to admire so much when he was a boy. But now it started to feel slippery. He wasn't coming over as often. The coffee visits became phone calls. The phone calls became rushed texts. I'd ask him about the bills and he'd laugh. Didn't I say I've got it covered? And yet, the house felt different. Like it didn't belong to me anymore. One afternoon, I opened the front door to check the roses. My husband planted them 40 years ago, and there was a woman standing at the end of the walkway. She was looking around, clipboard in hand, a car idling at the curb. "Can I help you?" I asked. She smiled politely. "Oh, I'm just doing a walkthrough before the turnover." "Turnover?" "Yes," she said, flipping a page. "New owners are scheduled to move in next month. I'm just confirming the timeline. When did you say you were moving out?" I stared at her, heart thudding. "I didn't." The woman paused, brow furrowed. "Oh, I'm sorry. I was told the current occupant was aware." I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in the kitchen, staring at my teacup like it might give me answers. Michael didn't pick up my call. The next day, I marched down to the post office. The clerk typed in my name and address. Then she looked confused. "Says here, Ms. Thomas, mail. Forwarding has been set up to a P.O. box in Sacramento." "Sacramento?" She nodded. 2 weeks ago. I never set that up. I went home and pulled open the utility drawer. Empty. Not a single envelope. The documents I'd kept, receipts, invoices, old bank letters, gone. The file cabinet was bare. I checked the gas bill online, needed a password. Tried the password I'd used for years. Denied. Same with electric. Same with my bank. I sat on the couch, shaking. My own house didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a stage someone else had dressed. Then the next morning, Michael finally showed up, breezing in like nothing had happened, carrying a bag of groceries and a story about cell towers being down and how work had been a nightmare. "Where are my bills?" I asked him. He raised his eyebrows, then chuckled. "Still stuck on that? Mom, it's handled. You told me to take care of it, remember?" "No," I said, standing now. "I told you to help me manage, not take it over." He dropped the bag on the counter. "Same thing. I'm helping you. Isn't that what you wanted?" But his eyes were different now. Not the warm, boyish spark I knew. Cold. Calculating. And when I asked him again, "What's going on, Michael?" he looked at me like I was a child. "You're overthinking again. Maybe it's time you stop worrying so much." That night, I sat in the guest room and cried. I kept thinking about the paper I signed. That one form. The way he rushed me. The way he said, "It's just legal housekeeping, Mom. Makes it easier in case anything happens." But what if that paper had said more than I knew? What if I'd signed away more than just management? What if I'd signed away everything? I didn't have proof, just a feeling, just tiny cracks forming around the edges of my world. But I knew this. Something wasn't right, and whatever it was, it had already begun. The next week, I asked Michael a question I hadn't asked in years. "Where's the deed to the house?" He was at the kitchen table, flipping through his phone, acting like he still belonged in the space that once held birthday parties, Christmas mornings, and quiet dinners with my husband. He didn't even look up. "It's handled," he said flatly. That phrase again. Handled. Like I was a loose thread on a shirt he didn't want to deal with anymore. "I didn't ask if it was handled," I said gently, but firmly. "I asked where it is." He sighed like a man who'd been asked too many times. "Mom, stop worrying. You don't need to keep track of every little piece of paper anymore. That's what I'm here for." But I did need to know. Because I'd lived in this house for over 40 years. I paid the mortgage. I repainted the walls after every season. I cried in this house. I laughed in this house. This house had been mine before Michael ever had facial hair. "I want to see it," I said. "The deed, the title, whatever it is you think is handled." That's when he snapped. He pushed his chair back hard, too hard. It scraped the floor like a scream. "Why are you always like this?" he barked. "Why can't you just let me help you?" I froze. My son had raised his voice at me before, but not like that. Not with that edge. That venom. Then, just as quickly, he caught himself, smoothed it over. "Sorry," he said, forcing a smile. "I've just had a long day. I didn't mean to yell." But the air didn't go back to normal. It hung heavy. That night, while he was in the shower, I stood in front of his home office door. He had moved into the guest room weeks ago, claiming it was easier to work from here while renovations were going on at his apartment. But now, it felt like he had taken up more than space. The office was locked. Of course it was. The next morning, he left early, muttering something about errands. I waited until his car was down the street. Then I looked under the couch cushions, behind the fridge, even in the potted plant near the door. That's where my husband used to hide keys. Sure enough, one was taped under the desk drawer in the hallway. I opened the office. It smelled like coffee and printer ink. His laptop was gone, but the filing cabinet was there, locked again. I almost gave up, until I noticed the little brass key still sticking out of the top drawer. Inside were folders, dozens of them. I found one labeled, Property, 43 Sycamore. That's my house. I opened it with shaking fingers. There were papers, some old, some new, But then, there it was. The deed. But it didn't look right. The first page had my name. Rose Thomas. Owner. Clear as day. But stapled behind it was a second version, dated 3 months ago. My name was gone. It said the property was now under Thomas Son Property Holdings. And under that? Sole proprietor, Michael Thomas. I read it twice, 3 times. It wasn't just that he'd removed me, he'd replaced me. All of it, the insurance, the tax records, even the home security system, everything was in his name. There was a note paper-clipped to the last document. Title transfer confirmed. Client signature recorded. Client signature. Mine. That paper I'd signed. The one he rushed me through in the kitchen weeks ago. The one he said was just for housekeeping. It wasn't for help. It was a trap. He'd taken everything. I sat down in his chair. The room swayed around me. I thought about every sacrifice I made for him, every late-night shift I worked to put him through school, every scraped knee I kissed, every bedtime story, every whispered promise, I'll always be here for you. And this is what he'd done. He didn't just take the house, he erased me from it. I placed the file back exactly where I found it, locked the drawer, closed the door, and walked back to my room on town. Legs that didn't feel like mine. I didn't know what to do next. But I knew this. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. And I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. Because now, I had more than suspicion. Now, I had proof. The next morning, I didn't speak to him. Not when he made his coffee. Not when he offered me toast. Not even when he whistled on his way out the door like he hadn't just gutted me the night before. I waited until after lunch. I needed to see his face when I asked the question. I needed to hear the lie for myself. "Michael," I said when he walked back in, "when exactly did the house deed change names?" He stopped in his tracks. "What are you talking about?" he asked, too casually. "I'm not playing games," I said. My voice was steady, but something inside me was trembling. "I saw the papers. I saw the file in your office." For a second, just a second, his eyes flashed with something. Anger? Fear? I couldn't tell. But then it was gone. He shrugged and tossed his keys in the bowl by the door. That's old news, Mom. You signed the house over to me months ago." The words knocked the breath from my lungs. What? He looked at me like I was slow, like I was the one making things difficult. "You don't remember? I had you sign it back in May, right at the kitchen table. I told you it was the easiest way to manage things. You said you trusted me." I felt like the room had tilted. "I thought that was for refinancing," I whispered. "You said it was just paperwork, for the insurance, or the taxes." Michael sighed, like I was exhausting him. "It was for the title. We needed to get it out of your name so we could protect the asset." "Protect it from what?" I snapped. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to his briefcase, pulled out a file, and handed me a paper. "Here, your signature, bottom right." I took it in shaking hands. There it was. My name. Rose Thomas. In my own handwriting, I remembered the day perfectly now. The tea on the table, the pen he handed me, the way he hovered, smiling, reassuring. "You said it was just a form," I whispered. "It was a form," he said. "You're just upset because now you finally realize what it was for." I looked up at him, blinking hard. "You tricked me." He laughed, and shook his head. "Don't be dramatic. I didn't trick you. You just didn't listen." The betrayal settled into my bones like winter. "You told me you were helping, that this would make things easier, that we were a team." Michael crossed his arms. "And aren't we? You still live here. You still have your room. Nothing's changed. Everything's changed, I said, my voice breaking. I don't own this house anymore. You never needed to, he said coldly. You're getting older. Things are complicated. I did what I had to do. No, I said quietly. You did what you wanted to do. We stood there in silence for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and walked away. Just like that. Like I was a business deal he'd closed. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd fed him cereal before school, helped him with homework, wrapped his Christmas presents. I looked at the paper again. My signature, clear, confident, unknowing. And all I could think was, he used my trust like a weapon. I didn't know where to go, who to call. But I knew this. If that paper was real, if my name was really no longer on the deed, then I didn't just lose a house. I lost my safety. I lost the promise that he would protect me. And I wasn't sure how to get any of it back. It was supposed to be a simple day. Just a quick trip to the store for milk, eggs, and the cinnamon tea I liked to sip in the afternoons. The sun was soft, the air crisp, and I remember thinking, as I shuffled my cart back to the car, at least today feels normal. I didn't know it would be the last time anything did. When I pulled into the driveway, something felt off. My welcome mat was gone. The planter with the little hummingbird I'd painted was missing from the front step. I walked up slowly, balancing my grocery bags in one arm. Then I reached for the doorknob, and it didn't turn. I tried again, harder. The key didn't fit. I paused, heart racing. Maybe it was just the angle. Maybe the lock was sticky, but I knew that lock like I knew my own hands. This wasn't sticky. This was new. I knocked, confused. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. Then I heard footsteps inside, a woman's voice. And when the door opened, it wasn't my son. It wasn't anyone I recognized. She looked to be in her late 20s, holding a tape gun in one hand, a roll of bubble wrap in the other. Her eyes widened. "Oh, I'm sorry. Can I help you?" I blinked, confused. "This is my home. I live here." She stared at me, puzzled. "I was told the previous owner passed away. I signed the lease this morning." My stomach dropped. "Excuse me?" She looked concerned now, setting the tape gun down. "Are you family?" "I'm his mother," I said, my voice shaking. "Michael Thomas. This is my house." Her face changed instantly. The blood drained from her cheeks. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "He told me his mother passed in March." March. I was standing on the porch in September. That wasn't a lie. That was erasure. I stepped back, nearly tripping over the bags I had set down. I need to speak to him," I muttered. "He must have made a mistake. This can't be happening." The woman looked torn. "Do you want to come in? I think there are boxes with your name on them. In the garage. I didn't touch them. I thought they were old donations." Donations. My life. My memories. "I'll just check," I said stiffly, moving toward the side gate. It was unlocked. When I stepped into the garage, my legs nearly gave out. Boxes, neatly stacked, labeled with black marker. Mom's books. Linens, donate. Maeski, trash? He hadn't even bothered to hide it. There, in the corner, was my rocking chair. The one I used to sit in every morning. The one my husband built with his own hands. Covered in dust, like a relic. I opened a box. Inside were framed photos. My wedding, Michael's 5th birthday, the last picture I ever took with my husband before the cancer took him. No bubble wrap, no care, just tossed together like clutter. That's when I saw it. A folded piece of paper wedged between two photo frames. A printed move-in checklist. Tenant, Julia Evans. Address, 1145 Grove Street. Date of possession, September 1st. Landlord, Michael Thomas. I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just miscommunication. This was intentional. He had planned this, signed paperwork, collected a deposit, and then lied about me being dead. I walked out of the garage, clutching the paper in my hand. Julia was standing near the sidewalk, arms crossed, looking rattled. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "I just needed a place. He was really nice. Said it was his childhood home, that he was ready to let it go." I nodded slowly. "I understand," I said, even though I didn't, even though nothing made sense anymore. "I can give you his number," she offered. I shook my head. "I have it. But I didn't call him. Not yet." I picked up the bag of groceries, now warm and wilting, walked back to my car, and sat there for a long time, staring at the house I no longer had the key to. The curtains in the living room had already been changed. My mother's lace ones replaced by heavy beige drapes. The doormat now read, "Welcome home." What a cruel joke. I drove away. Not to a friend's, not to a hotel, just away. Somewhere between the grocery store and nowhere at all, I pulled over and let the tears come. Not just because I'd lost the roof over my head, but because my own son had buried me while I was still breathing. He didn't just steal my house. He rewrote my existence. And now, I had to decide who I was without the home that built me, and what I was willing to do to take it back. I didn't know where to go. The first night, I sat in the parking lot of the grocery store down the hill, my purse clutched in my lap, and the keys to a house I no longer owned still dangling from my trembling fingers. I remember staring at the front door of that house earlier that day. Locked, cold, unfamiliar. It didn't feel like home anymore. And maybe it never really had. Not to him, anyway. I slept in my car. Or rather, I closed my eyes and waited for the sun to rise. I didn't cry that night. I couldn't. My body felt numb, my chest too tight. Like my ribs were holding everything in because if I let even one sob out, I'd collapse completely. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the silence after. The sudden vacuum where a family's love was supposed to live. I didn't call anyone. Not my church group. Not my old neighbor, Dolores. Not even my cousin in Sacramento. I couldn't stomach the words. My son sold my house, and now I sleep in a sedan. The second night, I parked behind the library. It was quieter there. I leaned the seat back as far as it would go and tried to cover myself with an old cardigan I'd stuffed into the back seat weeks ago. I hadn't packed anything. No suitcase, no food, just my purse, a water bottle, and my shame. I watched the stars that night, blurry through the windshield. They looked so peaceful, like they didn't care that I was nobody now, just an old woman who once had a front porch and now had headlights shining through her windows. That night, I did cry. I cried because I remembered the day I brought my son home from the hospital, how I held his little face against my chest and promised to protect him. I remembered every scraped knee I kissed, every lunch I packed, every bedtime story I read when I was so tired I could barely keep my eyes open. I remembered the Christmas he asked me if Santa would bring us a new microwave because ours sparked whenever we used it, and how I went without new shoes that year to make sure he got it. And I thought, how did that little boy become this man? He hadn't called, not even once. After locking me out, he sent a single text. "You'll be fine, Mom. It's better this way. And that was it. No explanation, no apology, just cold, scripted distance. I didn't respond. The third night, I parked 2 blocks away from my old house. I just wanted to see it again, not to go in, just to look, to remind myself I hadn't imagined it all. The birthday banners, the Sunday pancakes, the gardenia bush my husband planted before he died. But when I got there, the porch light was on, and someone else's car sat in the driveway, a silver SUV. I didn't recognize it. Through the window, I saw movement. A woman, maybe in her 40s, laughing as she carried a vase of fresh flowers to the kitchen counter. And then I heard her say, "It still smells like her perfume." I held my breath. Another voice answered. It was the woman's daughter, maybe? "Are you sure we're okay to be here already?" "She said his mother passed away months ago," the woman replied. "It's all official. Can you believe how quickly it all went through?" I couldn't hear the rest. I didn't want to. I backed my car away slowly and parked at the park near the elementary school, the same park where I used to take him to feed ducks. I sat on the bench near the sandbox, even though it was well past midnight, and listened to the silence. I thought it would be comforting. It wasn't. It was heavy, like something unsaid pressing down on my chest. And that's when I realized what I had done. What I had allowed. I had let my silence become my shame. I had handed him my trust, and he used it like a key, not to protect me, but to take everything I had left. I was tired of crying, tired of hiding, tired of pretending I was okay. So the next morning, I went to the community center. I didn't have an appointment. I didn't even know if they could help. But I walked through those doors like they were my last shot at breathing again. The receptionist looked up, her smile warm but tired. "Can I help you, ma'am?" I paused. "I think my son stole my house." Her smile faded, and she stood. "Have a seat. I'll call someone." They sent a social worker to speak with me, a young man named Jordan. He wore glasses, had a soft voice, and didn't flinch when I told him everything. Every awful detail. When I finished, he nodded slowly and said, "I know someone at the legal aid clinic downtown. They take elder housing abuse cases." I blinked. "That's a thing?" He gave a soft smile. "More than you'd think." He helped me fill out a form. He made the call himself. Booked me a spot at a temporary women's shelter for that night. It wasn't a palace, but it was warm, safe, and I had a bed. That night, for the first time in days, I slept with a roof over my head. And somewhere between midnight and morning, I made a decision. This wasn't the end of my story. I may have been quiet, I may have been trusting, I may have loved him more than he ever deserved. But I wasn't weak. I would fight for what was mine, not just the house, but my dignity, my story, my voice. Because silence hadn't saved me. But maybe now it could guide me back to the beginning, back to the truth, one word at a time. I was sitting on the shelter bed, my back propped up against the wall, when the memory hit me. Not like lightning, more like a quiet whisper that had been waiting patiently in the back of my mind. A thread in an old quilt, just waiting to be pulled. I remembered sitting at the dining table with my husband years ago. He was still alive then, full of gentle wisdom and the kind of quiet foresight that made you feel safe. We were redoing the house title, preparing for what might come someday. Taxes, illness, probate. He always wanted things to be clean, as he put it, simple, secure. But I had insisted on one thing, a clause, something I'd read about in a newsletter from the local senior center. Life estate rights, it said, a legal provision that would ensure I could live in our home my home, until I passed away, no matter what happened on paper. I just want that protection, I had told him back then. Not because I don't trust you, just because life surprises you. He'd smiled and agreed. We went down to the county office, paid the notary, signed the forms, life estate rights granted. The document went into a manila envelope in our fireproof box. And then, like so many important things, it faded into the background of memory. Until now. Until that one spark lit up my mind in the middle of a concrete-walled shelter room. My hand shook as I reached for my phone. The one Jordan from the legal clinic had helped me reactivate. I called the lawyer's office Rachel had connected me with. A kind older woman named Sonia picked up. "Sonia," I said, my voice breathless. "I think there's a clause. A life estate. I added it years ago, before my husband passed." She paused. "Do you remember the year?" 2011, I said. Or maybe 2012. I don't know. I need someone to find it. She didn't waste time. "I'll start digging through county records. If it exists, we'll find it." That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept circling. If the clause was still valid, if it had never been removed, then everything my son had done might unravel. He thought had he owned the house. He thought I was powerless. But what if the law still saw me as a resident with rights? The next morning, I sat at the edge of the shelter bed, staring at the clock on the wall. Seconds moved like syrup. My stomach twisted, not with hunger, but with anticipation. Then the phone rang. It was Sonia. Her voice sounded different, firmer, charged. "Maya," she said, "we found it." I gasped. "You did?" "Yes. A recorded amendment from 2011. It's official. Notarized, filed. Your husband signed it. You signed it. It grants you life estate rights. Irrevocable unless you willingly release them in a separate notarized document." "And I never did that," I whispered. "Then you're still the legal life tenant," she confirmed. "They may have transferred ownership, but they can't kick you out. Your rights are protected. They broke the law when they changed the locks." I pressed my hand over my mouth. For a second, I couldn't breathe. After everything, after the betrayal, the nights in the car, the humiliation of being boxed out of my own life, there it was. A line in a contract. A sentence my son never cared to read. That's what saved me. He thought he was clever, thought he'd tricked me, taken advantage of my trust, my aging memory, but he didn't do his homework, and I had. Sonia explained the next steps. "We'll file an injunction. Emergency. We'll present this to the court as a violation of elder housing rights. This clause is ironclad, Maya. You don't need to fight for the house back. You just need to fight for what was always yours." The word stuck in my head. Always. Not borrowed. Not conditional. Always mine. Later that day, I met Sonia in person. She handed me a copy of the document. My name, printed clearly. My rights, outlined in legal language that suddenly felt like poetry. I stared at the paper like it was a photograph of my younger self, proof that I had once been strong enough to think ahead, to protect myself, even from the people I never imagined I'd need protection from. "You didn't tell your son about this clause, did you?" Sonia asked gently. I shook my head. I didn't think I needed to. She gave me a knowing look. "That's probably why he never bothered to look. He thought you'd just roll over. Most people do. But I hadn't. And now, I wouldn't." We left the office with a game plan. Sonia was efficient, stern but kind. She believed in me, which made it easier to believe in myself again. As I walked back to the shelter that evening, the sunset hit differently. The sky was streaked with gold and lavender, like the world was slowly apologizing for the way it had treated me. I stopped on the sidewalk, pulled out the document again, held it in the fading light, and I whispered, not to anyone in particular, but to the version of myself who almost gave up. You didn't lose. You paused. And now you're back. Because my son thought he'd taken everything. But in the end, it was one sentence, one clause, that he overlooked. And it was that fine print that would turn everything around. The courthouse smelled like old wood and tension. I sat on the left side of the courtroom, behind a modest oak table with Sonia beside me, papers neatly stacked, calm on the surface but steel underneath. I wore my only blazer, navy blue, with buttons too stiff from years in the closet. My hands trembled in my lap, but I kept my chin high. Across the room sat my son. His suit was sharp. His expression wasn't. He looked irritated, like the whole event was an inconvenience. Maybe he still thought he'd win, that I was just an old woman confused and dramatic. But he hadn't seen the document yet. Not really. The judge entered, a tall man with glasses that caught the light. He looked down at the case file, flipping through pages without comment. The silence was thick enough to chew. When he finally spoke, his voice was even. We're here today to determine the legality of an ownership transfer and assess whether the defendant, Ms. Thomas, retains residential rights under California law. Sonia stood, her voice calm but deliberate. Your Honor, my client is not disputing ownership. We are not here to claim the house back. We are here to affirm her irrevocable life estate rights, granted by a signed and recorded amendment dated 2011. She handed the judge a copy of the document. Your Honor, this clause, filed years prior, clearly states, Ms. Thomas retains the legal right to reside in the home until her death. That right was never revoked. There is no record of a voluntary release, no override. This clause remains in effect. The judge nodded, reading the highlighted section. Then, without looking up, he said, Mr. Thomas, did you review this amendment before initiating the sale? The courtroom went dead still. My son shifted. His jaw twitched. Then he stammered. I mean, the lawyer said everything was clean. We thought she had signed the house over already. The judge raised an eyebrow. I didn't ask about what the lawyer said. I asked you, did you personally review the amended agreement filed in 2011 that granted your mother life estate rights? My son opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked toward his attorney, some young man in a charcoal suit who suddenly looked very pale. Sonia stayed perfectly still. I did too, and in that breathless pause, I felt it. That shift. The courtroom turning. The judge leaned back. Let the record show the seller did not perform due diligence prior to sale, that he was either unaware of or willfully ignored an existing legal clause. My son's lawyer tried to jump in. Your Honor, if I may, we believe there was ambiguity in the record. No ambiguity, the judge cut in. It's filed. It's signed. It's binding. He turned to look directly at me. For a moment, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't an old woman who got in the way. I was someone who mattered. Ms. Thomas, he said, you may proceed with reinstatement of residency under your life estate clause. Furthermore, the court will assess whether damages are owed for unlawful eviction and hardship. The plaintiff's actions were reckless at best, malicious at worst. My son finally spoke up, but it wasn't with strength. She never told me, he snapped. She never said anything about that clause. I looked at him for the first time in weeks, really looked, and I said, loud enough for the judge to hear, You never asked. He froze. The judge tapped his gavel lightly. This matter is temporarily resolved pending final order. Ms. Thomas's rights are to be restored immediately. And just like that, the silence broke. Sonia gently touched my hand. You did it. I didn't smile. Not yet. Because it wasn't about winning. It was about being seen. It was about the truth, spoken clearly, echoed in wood-paneled walls, carved into the record like it always should have been. My son didn't look at me when we passed him in the hallway. He stood against the wall, arms crossed, face flushed with something like shame, or maybe just disappointment that his shortcut didn't work. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. The law had done the talking for me. We stepped outside into the California sunlight, the courthouse doors swinging closed behind us. It was bright, too bright, and I had to squint. But there was warmth in my chest that hadn't been there in weeks. Not anger, not triumph, just peace. The kind that comes when a judge asks the right question, and the truth finally answers. The courthouse was quieter that morning. No media, no crowd, just a few early birds on hard wooden benches and the low shuffle of papers in legal hands. I sat alone, except for Sonia by my side. She had her folder open, highlighter tucked behind her ear, calm as ever. I wasn't calm. I was steady. There's a difference. Across the aisle, my son looked smaller than before. No flashy suit this time. Just a gray blazer he didn't bother buttoning, and a look in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. Uncertainty. Maybe even fear. But I wasn't there to read his face. I was there to hear the words. The judge stepped in and took his seat without preamble. He didn't look around. Just opened the file in front of him, adjusted his glasses, and began. This court has reviewed all evidence, testimony, and legal documentation concerning the disputed transfer of property located at 1412 Hillcrest Avenue, San Mateo, California. My hands clutched each other tightly, including the filed life estate clause dated 2011 and the defendant's subsequent exclusion from decision-making, financial access, and rightful residency. My son shifted in his seat. The judge continued. We find the transaction to have been conducted with gross negligence and without due diligence on the part of the seller. The existing life estate rendered the sale invalid from the outset. He looked up. The sale is hereby voided. I didn't breathe. Not at first. I just sat there, still as stone, as the words rang in my ears like church bells. Final, clear, irrefutable. The judge wasn't finished. In addition to nullifying the transfer, this court is ordering restitution to be paid to Ms. Thomas for unlawful eviction, emotional distress, and temporary displacement. The plaintiff is fined and will be subject to civil penalty review. A pause. Then softly, Ms. Thomas, you may return to your residence immediately. Your legal right to live in the property remains intact for the duration of your life. Sonia smiled. Not wide, just enough. My son slumped forward. His lawyer scribbled something in a panic. But I didn't look at them. Not yet. The judge stood. Court is adjourned. The gavel fell. So did the last weight in my chest. Outside, the sun met my skin like a long-lost friend. The steps down from the courthouse felt fewer than I remembered. Sonia stayed behind to file some final documents, so I walked out alone, but not unaccompanied. Grief was still with me, so was strength. And truth. My son followed me out. He caught up with me on the sidewalk, breath shallow, eyes darting like he expected a punch I'd never throw. Mom, he started. I stopped. He waited. I turned, looked him full in the face. For once, he didn't have that smirk. Just a broken sort of guilt trying to find a place to land. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he mumbled. That's the thing, I said. You didn't mean for me to find out. He flinched. I didn't. You didn't lose a house today, I added, voice quiet but clear. You lost your mother. He stared at me like he didn't understand. But I think he did. Because he didn't follow me after that. He just stood there, watching me walk away. No apology. No tears. Just silence. And for once, I didn't need his words. I had mine. I had the judges. I had the truth. Back in my car, I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, watching the courthouse disappear in the rearview mirror. I didn't cry. Not even when I pulled out the original deed, now returned, with my name still shining in ink. Life estate, the right to remain, the right to exist, in my home, on my terms, with no one to take that away again. Justice doesn't always come loud. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a clause buried deep in a contract and a courtroom that finally listens. But when it comes, it leaves no room for doubt and no space for guilt that isn't yours to carry. The key turned in the lock like it always had. Not a new key, not a spare. My key, the same one I'd carried for 38 years, on a dull brass chain next to an old St. Christopher medallion my husband once gave me for safe travels. When the door opened, the scent hit me first. Not the old comforting scent. No, that was long gone. This was a sharp mix of unfamiliar cleaning sprays, cologne, and something too sterile to belong in a home, like someone tried to wipe away the memory of me. But memories don't come off with bleach. I stepped inside, quiet, careful, like I was walking into a stranger's house. Except every wall had my history. Every corner held echoes. The front rug was different. The curtains were gone. But the indentations in the carpet near the fireplace, from my late husband's recliner, still there. I took a breath. This was mine, still mine. The deed, the law, the truth, they all said the same thing. I wasn't trespassing. I was coming home. The house didn't welcome me at first. It stood still, cold, waiting, like it didn't trust me to stay this time. I couldn't blame it. The bedroom had been stripped bare. My floral comforter, the one with the stitched roses, was gone. Drawers empty, closet cleaned. But on the nightstand, a small frame had been flipped face down. I turned it over. It was the photo from our trip to Mendocino in '89. Me, my husband, and our baby boy on the cliffs. My smile was real in that one. I held it for a long time, then placed it upright. Over the next few days, I cleaned, not just for dust, for dignity. I opened the windows, let the stale air out, aired the rugs, scrubbed the walls, and with every sweep of the mop and fold of the laundry, something returned. Me. I wasn't erasing the pain, just replacing it with presence. The attic came last. It had always been my husband's space. He'd called it the archive, stuffed with blueprints, broken clocks, and things he promised to fix one day. I hadn't been up there in years. But something pulled me now. The wooden stairs creaked, same as always. A cobweb brushed my cheek. Dust bloomed in the air like ghosts being stirred awake. In the corner, under a blue tarp, was the old cedar chest. I opened it slowly. Blankets, a faded sweater, and underneath, a yellow envelope. My name written in his handwriting. Helen. Just that. Inside, a folded letter. If you're reading this, you're probably up here looking for something to hold on to, and I hope this helps. You've always been the spine of this home, even when I thought I was the head. I know I didn't always say it, but I saw you. Every sacrifice, every quiet strength, every time you held this family together with sheer will and gentle hands. I made sure when we changed the title, you'd have protection. I told our lawyer to bury that clause deep, because I knew one day someone might try to take what was yours, and I wasn't going to be around to stop it, but I hoped this would. You've already survived so much, Helen. If you're reading this, I hope you remembered who you are. You don't need my name beside yours to be powerful, but I'm glad it's there. And one last thing, don't let this place stay cold. Fill it again, with laughter, noise, and maybe even a few burnt cookies. You were always better at love than loss. Yours always, Jay. I don't remember sitting down, but I found myself on the attic floor, letter in hand, crying for the first time, not because of what I lost, but because of what I'd kept. Love, memory, worth. He saw me, even when he was gone. And now, so did the law. So did the truth. I came down from the attic with that letter pressed to my heart like armor. That night I made soup, my kind, oversalted, full of root vegetables, the way my husband liked. I turned on the old jazz station and sat at the kitchen table like nothing had changed. Except everything had. I wasn't a woman displaced. I was a woman restored. A week later, the new sign arrived in the mail. A friend from church had it made. Thomas Residence, Est, 1974, and underneath, in smaller script, still standing. I smiled, screwed it onto the mailbox myself. The mailman noticed. "Glad to see you back, Ms. Thomas," he said. "Glad to be back," I replied. Sometimes I walk through the halls at night, touching the walls like they're old friends. They held me through joy, grief, and betrayal. They still stand. And so do I. A few days ago, I opened the front door to a young woman standing nervously on the porch. She said, "My mom told me you lived here before. I just wanted to see if it was true, that you got it back." I nodded. She smiled. "That's amazing." I looked at her. Maybe 25. Eyes full of questions. I said, "You ever been betrayed by someone you raised?" She blinked. "Not yet." I smiled softly. "If you ever are, don't forget who taught them to stand. You can stand taller." She laughed awkwardly, then turned to go. But I think she understood something she didn't have words for yet. I leave you with this. Have you ever been betrayed by someone you raised? Tell me in the comments. I'll be reading every word. And if this story made you feel less alone, hit that subscribe button. Not because I need followers, but because somewhere out there, another woman just found her locks changed, and she needs to know there's a way back in.